Hello, everyone. My name is always Asma. Welcome to another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow. For those who've watched quite a few of these episodes, if you know anyone else who would benefit, please share it with at least one person. Now, if you're joining us live, drop a 1 in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a 2 in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is Ayman Kaouri, the founder of a technology transformation business in the Middle East that focuses on SMEs. He was also the former head of Xero in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. He was previously based in London and now operates out of Dubai. Ayman, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Let's jump straight into it. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And even outside of work, who is Ayman Kaouri? Give us that backstory.
Okay, long story. So I hope you're strapped in. So basically, I born and raised in Belfast a long time ago, but I don't have the Northern Irish accent. I ended up actually moving to the UAE in the early 90s to Sharjah before it was really built up. It was nothing like what it is today. We stayed here only for a couple of years and then ended up moving to England, so moving back to the UK and spending most of my life there up until last year when I made the move back to the UAE again, almost 30 years later, and things have changed significantly, as you can imagine, over here. But yeah, I've spent most of my career in tech. So as a young boy, even when I was 2 years old, I was sitting in my mum's lap when she worked at home, and that was a thing. Even in the 1980s Belfast, she worked from home on her old IBM PC, and she'd get me to start typing on the keyboard, right? So I think a career in tech was my destiny somehow. I was fixing all the computers at home by the time I was 8 years old. So yeah, I really got into things. I started programming, I think, when I was 6 or something like that. And then I did computer science at university. So I throughout my school career, I kind of kept up with the whole tech scene and became like a kind of bedroom petty hacker, not really doing anything kind of dangerous or too illegal, I don't think, but just the playful stuff that you could get away with early days before people actually had antiviruses. So I kind of experimented with all these kind of things. And I did computer science at university. And then straight out of uni, I got a job at a property management software company called Cube. And over there, I went straight into a technical role. So I was kind of doing some programming, fixing. It was like a customer service role, but I was doing first, second, third line support. So I would fix the bugs, I would find out everything that they were, and then redeploy the code and all this kind of stuff. But I very quickly realized that I was more into the people side than the technical side of computing and tech. So I started moving my way up to consulting, so a consultancy role, helping kind of map business processes to the software. And then I moved into project management, so again, managing teams of people as opposed to actually doing the nitty gritty of the coding. And then I moved to Xero. So this was probably 6-7 years ago now. I moved to Xero and I was managing a team of consultants over there. And then very quickly got to learn the accounting tech space there. And I did various roles. I did about 4 roles in 5.5 years over there. And the most recent one was the one that you mentioned, which is the kind of this head of EMEA role, which was essentially growing Xero's footprint in the EMEA emerging markets. So outside of the UK and South Africa, everywhere else I was kind of trying to grow those markets with a go-to-market team that was dedicated to do that. And then here I am today. So yeah, here I am today now in Dubai. Outside of work, yeah, I'm a family man first and foremost. So I've got a wife and 2 young girls. One's 7 and one's almost 7 and one's just turned 2 as well. So yeah, try and spend as much time with them as possible in the evenings and weekends. Around being a business owner, obviously it can be challenging, but Dubai has been a great place to do that, to be honest. So since we moved here, we found that family life has improved quite a lot, and there's heaps to do.
I noticed, Xero is a massive company and you're in charge of a massive region with very different types of clients. If I think of affordability of clients in Europe and the Middle East and Africa, it's very different. So how do you manage working with such different types of people?
Yeah, it was all about prioritization, to be honest. So the team that I was running was a new concept, so it didn't exist before. It was a team that I pitched for, and but essentially we wanted to see what traction we could gain by actually having a proactive effort in certain markets. So for years, Xero's grown outside of its core markets, almost organically, right? So people had heard of Xero either through someone that they know, or they've come to that country and they brought it with them from their home country, or any other way of kind of organically bumping into it without really actively pushing it. So what we had to do was prioritize. So I looked at where it looked like Xero had traction and focused on those markets from a proactive perspective. But yeah, you're right. Organically, you would get lots of people coming to us and lots of partners in lots of different regions, all with different needs. So lots of it was about setting expectations. Because we were a small team looking after such a big region, we had to know where our strengths were and try and help the partners we had in all the different countries as much as possible, but also set their expectations the right way. So that's actually, I think, a key lesson I've learned throughout my career is there's always going to be limitations. The most important thing is set the right expectations, and actually people are very understanding a lot of the time. So even if you can't give them the service that they'd love for you to be able to do, if you're honest with them and set their expectations, they're actually probably not going to bite your head off too much.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, I mean, having maybe Xero behind your name comes with a bit of, I wouldn't say power or gravitas, but it's different to starting your own business because you're basically starting from scratch. So what made you decide to open your own business instead of staying in a large organization like Xero?
Yeah, so fortunately, I wasn't starting completely from scratch. So Scope, we've been going for actually around 11 years over in Malta. So I've started from scratch in the UAE, and it's technically its own company. But we've got the backing of a company that's been doing what we're doing for around 11 years. And I've got a couple of co-founders with me, and they're kind of there as a safety net in many ways, but also they're part of the decision making. So from my perspective, I think naturally entrepreneurial in my mindset, insofar as I'm prepared to take risks, and I think I'm more optimistic than I am pessimistic. So, for example, I will think about the possibilities more than the barriers. I think I will acknowledge the barriers typically, but I think it helps in many ways as an entrepreneur to be comfortable with risk. It's necessary, and not only that, there's actually always a risk of not doing something. So I always look at both sides of it. So I will see the possibilities, and I'll back myself as well, because I've seen throughout my career, I've taken risks, and more often than not, they'll pay off. So I think that's given me, I guess, the psychological safety to be able to do that. So I think while you're early on in your career, you've got less to lose. Get comfortable with risk, and later on, it will give you the courage to be able to make bolder decisions, even when you have got a family with young kids like myself. And yeah, I think that's what it is. It's about getting comfortable with it. And yeah, I found it wasn't too difficult decision actually in the end.
Like, get comfortable with the risk. I'm going to use that line at some stage. But I know for you, I mean, you're someone who focuses now on the accounting profession, but you're not an accountant by trade. So it's almost like you're looking in from the outside, in a way. In your opinion, what is the mistake that you see accountants seem to keep making?
Yeah, I am coming from it from the outside, but I've actually kind of grown to love the accounting community, and it was during my time at Xero that really happened. So I spent a lot of time with accountants on a weekly basis, almost every other day. I was, particularly when I was running the partner consulting team, I was going out there meeting accounting firms day to day, and I would hear firsthand. And you know, most of these guys are small businesses or SMEs themselves, right? So you really see the human connection there. So I'd come from the enterprise space before. To move into the SME space was really eye-opening. So I really got to know the people behind the firms, and I can see that they all wanted to genuinely do well. So I got to know them really well. Now, the mistakes that they make, I would say, look, they're probably mistakes that lots of people make, and it's assuming that the thing that's been working for you for the years gone by is going to continue working for you in the years ahead. What we've seen, particularly in the last couple of years, AI has come in and really kind of blown everyone's socks off in many ways in terms of the possibilities and opened our eyes to the possibilities. I think lots of firms that have a head start in that they've been automating their practices for quite a few years now, or their systems, as much as possible, looking for software to try and solve problems. They're probably going to be able to capitalize on the opportunities that AI is giving them more so than the guys that have kind of left it a little bit late. That doesn't mean that there's not opportunities for people and that it's too late. But I think accountants are often very risk averse. So opposite to what I was saying before, probably unlike myself, I think most accountants are quite risk averse. And it's actually probably a good thing because your clients obviously want you to manage the financial risks for them, right? So that's an important part of the role. So it's a good thing, but it can also be your downfall in some ways if you're not prepared to take enough risks. And some risks such as changing the way you work and adopting new systems. These are risks that others have actually taken on your behalf in the industry. And the great thing is about communities of accountants. So they can be a really good way to learn from one another. For example, in the UK, I've seen certainly the Xero accounting community was very strong. And we had XeroCon, there was thousands of people showing up to that. And it was an amazing community. And lots of accountants actually don't just look at each other as competition anymore. They look at each other as, hey, these are my peers. We can all help each other. There's plenty of business out there. I think that positive mindset of actually collaborating and sharing ideas and let's help transform the industry together is a really good way to progress, and you'll benefit from it. So yeah, I think be less insular in terms of just trying to protect your business and try and form communities, and also be prepared to take more risks. I think those are the things that I would advise from the most successful firms that I've seen that have adopted the technology and adapted to the new way of working that seems to be prevailing.
For the audience, we'll be responding to questions towards the end, so please add your questions to the comment section now so that we don't miss them. So you moved to Dubai. I'm not sure how recently, but maybe talk to us about when you made the move and what was the reasoning behind your decision?
Yeah, so I moved here in June last year by myself, and my family joined me in October. So the reason for the move, so I was obviously working for Xero for 5.5 years. In my last role as that head of EMEA hub role in Xero, I was actually hoping to make the move with Xero over here in a couple of years' time. So I was prepping the market in some ways to the UAE. So I'd come out to the UAE, I'd been to Saudi Arabia as well. So I was coming to the Middle East. In some ways, I saw a huge opportunity in the region. They are really investing in SMEs, they're investing in digitalization, and I think in contrast to what I've seen in the UK and in Europe for the last 5 years or so, whenever I came to the Middle East, I always felt a sense of prosperity and positivity. And I was starting to feel that that was reversing. So I'd say Europe traditionally has had that feeling. It certainly hasn't felt like that for me over the last 5 years. So when I came here, I felt positivity, and I was excited by getting the opportunity to make a move here. So actually, it kind of forced. My hand was forced in some ways, actually. So Xero, as part of that restructuring last year, ended up deciding to focus on core markets more than emerging. So that meant that the opportunity that I was planning to grow wasn't going to be there. Certainly not in the short or medium term, right? So I made the decision to go to Dubai, regardless of what my next move was going to be. And then it was about finding the right move. And fortunately, I'd built a strong enough network that gave me options. So I had options of how I was going to come out here. And the one that resonated the most with me was talking to the guys at Scope, who I had a relationship with from my time at Xero, for all the amazing work that they'd done over in Malta. So yeah, I was excited by that, and it was a no-brainer. I made the decision literally within weeks that I was going to move. It took us a couple of months to sort out any details, and then I was out within 2 months of leaving Xero. I was over in Dubai by myself. So yeah, it was really quick, and my mind was already made up. Funnily enough, my wife and I had been watching YouTube videos of Dubai for quite a few months before, so kind of prepping ourselves before this whole thing happened. But we ended up just pressing the fast forward button more than anything. Our decision was made that we wanted to come here, so it was quite easy in the end.
2 months is quick, wow, to make that decision. But talk to us a little bit about the differences and maybe even some of the similarities of working in London versus working in Dubai.
Yeah, so differences, like definitely. So I thought the UK was very multicultural growing up there for sure. And particularly London. London is a very multicultural place. You'll meet people from all sorts of different nationalities. I would say the UAE, or certainly Dubai, is extremely multicultural. I dare to say even more so than London. I don't know statistically if that's true, but it certainly feels like a real melting pot. There's certainly more people from different cultures here in terms of the overall population size. Like if somewhere like Dubai has 90% expat population. So whereas in the UK, you still probably have a majority of people that are British. That's not the case necessarily in Dubai. So yeah, it feels like a multicultural place, which is something that I like. I'm fascinated by people from different cultures. I like to embrace differences rather than just pretend they don't exist. I like them. I like difference. I think it's a great thing. I love the fact that, and South Africa, right? You're like the Rainbow Nation, so a good example of this. I love the fact that you can kind of celebrate different cultures over here, and people do. So I enjoy that. So other differences, I would say it's more of a conservative society in some ways. So I think what I mean by that is they've held on to some traditional values that I quite enjoy, that I felt have been eroded a little bit in the UK. Such as family values. I think family very much still matters over here. I'm not saying that it doesn't matter in other places, but I think the family unit as a concept is still very much celebrated here. And I think it's been eroded a little bit, certainly in the UK anyway. That's what I felt. So if you love the idea of family and promoting the idea of family, then Dubai and the UAE as a whole, in the Middle East, I would say that those values kind of flow throughout. So I really enjoy that side of it. But there's also so much to do out here. It seems that it definitely comes more alive at night than during the day, and the heat probably is something to do with that, I would imagine. But for sure, like it's an amazing place. I've really enjoyed it. It's a lot sunnier than back home. So one big pull was actually the sunshine. So even if it gets really hot in the summer, actually just waking up every day and seeing the sun is enough to really kind of put a good start, a positive spin on your day from the off. And maybe you've probably got this in South Africa, I imagine, more so than in the UK. In the UK, I got used to grey skies, and it doesn't necessarily set your day off right when it's grey and cold.
I can imagine. I don't think I'd survive in the grey skies. I've also been watching some of the videos. The one thing that I always find quite interesting is in Dubai, they talk about chicks. And I was like, the last time I dealt with chicks was like 15 years ago. So, okay, that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And tell me, I mean, your customers are probably very different in this role compared to your previous role. Did that require a change of approach from you?
Say that again, sorry, it broke up a little bit.
So the customers that you have in your new business are probably very different to the customers that you have to deal with at Xero, for example. Did that require you to change your approach?
You know what? It's actually very similar. And funnily enough, so when I was at Xero, I was often working with accounting firms. So actually lots of the relationships that I had before, or the approaches I had, was similar. So today in my role at Scope, we're initially focusing our efforts on working with other accounting firms in a similar way to what Xero was doing. So we are out here, we're trying to help them see the value in digital technologies, in cloud-based software like Xero, like QuickBooks, like Zoho, etc. So we're trying to help them on that journey. And that's very much what we were doing at Xero before I joined Scope. So yeah, it's actually very similar, and it's been quite a natural progression. Now, what's changed for me is it's my own business here as well. So I have a vested interest, and I'm also trying to start something from scratch in some ways in a brand new market for Scope. So I'm having to focus a lot on building brand presence and doing everything from the whole marketing and sales funnel end to end. So as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you have to wear so many different hats. So in that respect, yes, the role is a lot more varied. Before, I was able to delegate things to more people in the team. Now I'm using some of the team over in Malta, but most of the work in market is happening from me while I build up the team.
Yeah, it's some of the vagaries of being an entrepreneur, but it's an interesting learning curve.
For sure.
This is one question I like to ask all my guests. What is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
It's a good question. And you hadn't prepared me for this, but I will think of one off the cuff, which is I would tell myself not to be as much of a people pleaser. I would say early on in my career, I was always conscious of wanting to make sure everyone keeps happy. I didn't like people to not be happy with outcomes, right? And I always wanted to please everyone in some ways. And it's a bit of a false economy. You think, oh, I tell you what, if I keep everyone happy, then no one's going to have anything to complain about. But it's not really sustainable, firstly. And actually, people end up taking advantage of you. You can end up being too nice. So I'd say, don't be too nice. Learn to be assertive early on is good. Don't be a nasty person, of course. Always be good. I think I've tried to maintain that throughout my career. Always try and be good, but also be fair. And sometimes it's okay to say no. And you don't have to please everyone, because actually some people have very unreasonable demands of you. So it's not a good thing to always try and please everyone. I think it's good to be able to get your points across and to help bring people on side if necessary, but I think I actually saw a post of yours that reminded me of this, but don't necessarily back down just because someone disagrees with you, right? Like if you've got convictions about something and you know they're true, then don't give in necessarily. Yes, be open-minded to the fact that you might learn something, and that's important, I think, with any conversation, is I might learn something from this person. But if you're not convinced, then don't pretend that you are and go along with them and compromise too much on things that you hold really dearly, at least, for sure.
That's great advice. Any last few words from you or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
Oh, last few words. I would say, look, for me, I've seen lots of people not be able to navigate their careers particularly well, and not be prepared to take risks. And this was, again, a post that I probably did, I think, in the last day or two. So I think that people ought to be prepared to take risks in life so that they can actually get anything that's meaningful. If you are going to be too risk averse, you end up going to clip your own wings, and people aren't going to just come up to you with a silver platter of opportunities. Try and keep an open mind. Try and think about what you've got to lose, but also look at what the opportunities are and what the risks are of not doing something. Be brave, for sure, and try and stay optimistic, because there's so much negativity in the world. Always reasons not to do things, always reasons to be down about something. But I say choose the path of positivity as much as possible. For your mindset, it kind of makes you feel good alone, let alone actually for what it does for your career. I think for your careers and your lives will be far greater if you just approach life with a positive mindset in general. And yeah, the outcomes more often than not will work out for the better. And the worst case scenario, you end up learning something. Right.
That's a great way to end the show. The show has been live on YouTube and should be available on podcast by tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast and you feel that it's added value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Ayman, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat.